Hello, hello, and welcome. So, thank you for joining me, whoever happens to hop on here. I apologize for not scheduling this ahead of time, but I tend to have these ideas and thoughts, and I just often act on them. So, if you're here live, thank you for joining me. If you watch this on the replay, I'd love to know if you've watched this and what your thoughts are. So please, even in the comments, you can hashtag replay and let me know what you think. So, welcome everybody. Hi, Lindsay. So, yes, please say hello. Especially if you're not somebody that I'm very familiar with, I would love to know who is here and who I'm connecting with. Hi, Alex. Yes, yay. Okay, so part of the reason I'm doing this on YouTube is I've tried to do some lives in Facebook and I keep getting cut off. I could take that as a sign to just not do lives, or I could take it as a sign that YouTube is where I should do this. So clearly, you know which sign I'm listening to. Thank you, Lenny. Thank you for being here. So yesterday on my Courageous Journeys Facebook page, I shared, I did a live video after seeing something on Facebook that just really kind of didn't sit well and kind of got my energy going. But I was talking about my frustration, my disappointment, my fear about just kind of the healing industry, in large part kind of like a self-development healing industry. And you can check that out on my Courageous Journeys page. I'll actually probably go ahead and upload it here to YouTube as well. But I was talking about some of that, and I'm not going to go into all of that here, but as I thought about it, even afterwards, because it's stayed on my mind, because this has been on my mind pretty continuously for a few years. So I kind of continued to think about it and decided to come in and share with you here today. So it's a little bit of a follow-up or an extension on the video I did yesterday, but it's also a little bit different. So this video is kind of about the idea that how often, pretty much for everybody, you're struggling with something, whatever it is, and you seek out resources to help you with that struggle, whether you're struggling with a relationship, motivation, feeling depressed or anxious, like even with a work situation, like not feeling motivated or whatever. So you seek out help. And when you do your search, whether it's on social media or a Google search or whatever, you're going to come up with all kinds of stuff. You're going to come up probably with some therapists, certainly some coaches, and even therapist sites that help you find a therapist. You're going to come up with all kinds of stuff, books, videos, all kinds of stuff. And it can be really pretty overwhelming. And there are a lot of different ideas out there. And that by itself is pretty difficult and hard to navigate, which is part of the frustration that I have, or the fear, I guess, that I have. So when you're struggling with something and you find these different resources to help, and a lot of people will go to a book or watching a video, my videos included, and think, okay, especially if there's been a lot of great reviews about it, right? You'll think, okay, this is going to be the thing that helps me. I also talk about this in another video from a while ago about why self-help doesn't work. But you think, okay, this is going to be the thing that's going to help me get through it. And at this particular point, there are just so many different techniques and people, ideas out there about how you heal, how you change your limiting beliefs and all of that. And so it's like, yes, that's what I want. That's what I need. I want to feel different. I want to be in a happy relationship. I want to have meaningful friendships in my life, or whatever it is. So you pick it up, you work with a coach, you do whatever it is, you do all the exercises in the book that it tells you to do, and you probably feel better, right? Because you're recognizing that, okay, there's help. I can do something to change this. If you're working with somebody, they hopefully show you or teach you that, help you understand that, yes, this isn't something that you can't get over or that you can't overcome or whatever. So you feel hopeful. And feeling hopeful always feels good. So you feel hopeful, you feel excited, you feel energized. So your thoughts tend to be more about, yes, I can do this. This person's going to help me. This person gets it. This book understands me. Like, yes, I can do this. That feels really good. So you do all the things you're supposed to do, whether it's techniques like affirmations or tapping or go to an energy healer or different things with your body or working with a coach or even a therapist. So you dive in, you do all these things, and it does help. Maybe it helps for a week, maybe it helps for months, as long as you're kind of staying really active in that place. But inevitably, if you are somebody that has deep core wounding, inevitably, you find that you're struggling again. And when you end up struggling again, unfortunately, you often end up feeling even worse than you did before you started whatever that thing is. And when you feel worse, or you're struggling again in general, it reinforces those core beliefs that you probably really haven't worked on healing at all. Those core beliefs of not being enough, not being worthy, not being deserving, being incapable, being stupid, feeling hopeless. Because when you feel all this excitement, all this energy, all this support and connection or whatever it is, that feels really good and you feel hopeful. You're doing things that are healthier for you. You're making better choices. You're maybe even setting some boundaries. You're reaching out, whatever it is. You're feeling good about that, and you should. You absolutely should feel good about that. But again, inevitably, something's going to come back because that's just the way life is. And when it does, you feel even worse because when you just kind of live your life and don't really have a lot of hope for change, or you just realize that this is going to be your life or whatever, then you're kind of living at this place here. When you start to feel hope in whatever way that is, and you start to feel all that energy, you're feeling like you're up here, which isn't a bad thing. That can be a really good thing, but you feel like you're up here. But then when that life thing happens, or you're no longer getting that support or just practicing those things every day or whatever, something happens. And in a sense, it feels worse because you have further to fall, so to speak. Because if you're just here and something happens, you might feel a little bit worse, but it's a little bit worse because you're already not feeling so great. If you're feeling good and something happens, then you feel even worse. And because you thought you were doing all the right things, you felt like you were doing better, and you end up struggling again, that reinforces significantly those beliefs. And the thing is, you may not consciously be aware that that's happening. And if you're not conscious that that's happening, it's going to have even more of an impact on you. So I want to talk a little bit about, I mentioned that, I don't remember how I referred to it just now, but kind of like that really significant core belief. So yesterday, one of the things that I talked about in the video is kind of the difference between healing and learning. So the learning can go a really long way for lots of different things, almost everything really. A lot of what I do, even when I was in private practice, was teaching. A lot of what I did was teaching. Learning is absolutely important, but healing is different. So the example I'm going to use is something that a lot of people can relate to. So you've heard me say that we're all wounded, and I absolutely believe that. For some of us, the wound may be not really, really deep, but still a core wound, or maybe not particularly traumatic or whatever. And then obviously for some of us, that wound is deep and very wide, and maybe multiple significant wounds. So an example that I thought of is if you are somebody who, like, really the biggest, most kind of difficult thing that you had to navigate in your life as a child was your parents getting divorced. Yes, that is not good for a child to have to go through. It creates different kinds of things. But it affects children differently. Because if you are a child whose parents divorce, but up until that point, you saw them maybe argue, but also make up in a healthy way. If in your own experience you felt loved, you felt safe to make mistakes, you felt safe to try new things, you had friends that you felt equal to and didn't compare yourself in a negative way to. So basically, if you had a really nice, healthy foundation and your parents split up, but they are healthy, which realistically doesn't actually happen all that often, but if they're healthy and they communicate well with one another, they don't talk badly about the other parent around you, you don't feel abandoned by one of your parents, or maybe you have those moments when you feel abandoned, but you know that you're loved, you know that they're going to be there for you, they both come to your events or whatever, then yes, that may have created some core wounding for you, some fears about relationships, whatever. If that's the case, then a book about that kind of stuff is going to go a long way, and it's going to be really helpful for you. Working with a coach to help you understand just what might have been going on or how that might impact you could be really good and beneficial. If you are somebody, on the other hand, or even working with a therapist that, for example, doesn't have much trauma experience, or is a new therapist, or kind of sees everything more kind of in a particular way, I guess I will say, then that could be really, really effective for you. If, on the other hand, let's still assume that your parents getting divorced is really kind of the biggest, most significant thing that you experience. So that's it, no trauma of other sorts or anything. But because, let's say the parents eventually got divorced, so let's say 8 or 9 years old, but their relationship up to that point was tumultuous. They didn't get along very well. There was always this tension in the house. They sometimes went maybe days or weeks without speaking to one another. Maybe one of them became angry a lot, one of them became depressed a lot, one of them was drinking a lot, whatever. But I think you kind of get the point that it wasn't a particularly healthy environment. And then they get divorced and they're still really struggling within themselves, and they talk badly about the other person, and they don't follow through on their commitments to you. That's going to leave a much deeper wound. It is. There's no way that it can't. Because all of that together has left you feeling unsafe. All of that has left you questioning where you fit. It's left you questioning, doubting that you matter, because their own struggle has taken up so much of their energy that they haven't been able to be there for you. So I'm not even talking about if they've been abusive to you. That's the whole additional, like 10 layers deep additional stuff there. But in that scenario, the wounding that you're left with is much more, well, it's deeper, which means it's much more complex, and significant. So what it takes to work through, to heal that wounding is going to look different. It's going to take more time. It's going to take more seasoned professionals to help you understand that in order to be able to heal it. So I hope that makes sense. So again, we're all wounded, two scenarios, same experience. And for a lot of people who've experienced that second scenario, they might say, or even a therapist or a coach might say to them, okay, so you don't trust and you worry about relationships, whatever. Well, yeah, that's probably going to be true, but it's way beyond that. So if that's what the focus is, even if a book you're reading, if that's the focus, then you're not working on the actual wound. You're working on the surface fears. And this is one of the things as to why I did the video yesterday, which on a higher level, you can kind of understand those fears. You can work to reframe them, doing even some reality testing around them. But until you are able to really understand what that actual fear is, because it's not just about somebody's going to hurt me, or if I get married, I'm going to be hurt, or my marriage isn't going to work out, or I can't trust people. It's bigger than that. And it doesn't mean that you have to sit in a therapist's office for years. It doesn't mean that you have to cry your eyes out or anything like that. It just means that you have to be able to really understand that and work on what that core wounding is. So the techniques that are out there, I think a lot of them have benefit. I think there's a lot of things out there, including books, that have a lot of benefit, without a doubt. There are tools and techniques that can be helpful, like meditating. I talk about meditating all the time. It's incredibly valuable, and I think just in general, very important to our overall well-being. But meditating by itself isn't going to heal you. Doing body work, whatever that might look like, doing energy work, whatever that might look like, that can be really helpful with symptoms, as well as potentially even healing some of the ways that your body or your nervous system reacts to things. It can be helpful. It can be effective in moments when you're feeling stressed out or whatever. So like tapping or Reiki, and I'm a Reiki practitioner, but those things don't heal that core wounding by itself. It can go a long way. It can really be effective in conjunction with other things. But there's so much out there saying, if you do this, you'll heal. If you do this, you'll heal. You take this six-week course, you're going to heal. And most of this is talking, even including actually talking about healing trauma. And healing combat trauma is very different than healing childhood trauma. One's not better or worse or anything like that. But there's a significant difference in what is necessary in order to be able to heal that. Because again, the wounding that we experience as a child, no matter what that wounding looks like, naturally, because we do have rational minds, our rational mind is not completely developed as a child, which is part of the problem. We have the ability to think, and we are meaning-making people. It helps us understand the world around us and how to maneuver, how to connect, and all of that. So there's a purpose for it. As children, well, as adults too, but as children, we make meaning out of difficult experiences because we try to understand it so that we don't experience it again and we don't feel hurt again. And I've done lots of videos about this. Because so your body is reacting to those things too, right? You feel fear, you feel hurt, whatever. You feel that in your body, like your heart hurts, you feel nauseous, you feel butterflies, you feel tense. Yes, all that happens in your body, which is why it's important to incorporate connecting to your body and doing things to help release all of that energy and fear inside of your body. That's important and necessary. But that doesn't do anything to help change the meaning that you've attached to those experiences. That lives in your mind. Yes, it also lives in your body because your body automatically reacts to the thought. And very often, those thoughts, that meaning, you're not conscious of. You just notice the thoughts that play through your mind. And the thoughts that play through your mind are what I might refer to. I don't use the term limiting beliefs, but when people talk about changing your limiting beliefs, those are the thoughts that go through your mind quickly. Like, I can't do that. I'll never be enough. I could never try that. Everybody thinks I'm an idiot or whatever. Like, those are limiting beliefs as far as I would refer to it. And I make a distinction here because I think it's important. So what I was talking about in the beginning, and like you're reading these books or whatever, focusing on those thoughts is important. We need to understand, what are the things that I'm saying to myself? But when you just focus on the thoughts that come up, you're not getting at the core belief that creates those thoughts. Those thoughts don't appear randomly out of nowhere. Those thoughts are the things that come from that core belief, and then those thoughts reinforce that core belief. And healing from childhood wounding, and we are all wounded in childhood to some degree or another, going back to that divorce example, in order to heal that wounding, we have to understand what that wounding is and how it is showing up, and why. We need to be able to understand, what is it that's triggering that? What is it that's taking me back to that core belief? So when you continue to struggle after doing all of these things, it's likely because you haven't done that, because there's a lot of, again, even therapists who don't do that. Or maybe don't maybe take the time, or put like stay steadfast with the process, because it can be long. It can be difficult at times. But it does take time to really work at changing that, because, and this is something I've talked about too, that I talk about changing a core belief is very much like trying to suddenly change your religion from one extreme to another. It's not going to work, right? It doesn't matter how much you talk yourself into wanting to believe this other thing, how much you tell yourself it's true, it's true, it's true. When life happens, when things are thrown at you unexpectedly, your automatic response, your automatic idea about something is going to come from what you've always believed. And the same is true for changing a core belief. So, the title of this was, It's Not About You. And I mean that because it's not about your inability. It's not about your worthiness. It's not about being undeserving, or that it's meant for other people and not you. It isn't because you're not trying. It's because most likely, whatever things that you've been doing are part of what you need to do, or maybe not helpful at all, but they may be a part of what is necessary, but it's not the whole picture. Now, having said that, obviously, You have to be willing to do the work. Somebody else can't do it for you. A book can't fix you. A therapist can't fix you. A coach can't fix you. A treatment program can't fix you. 10 rounds of addiction recovery can't fix you. And this is one of my issues with addiction recovery when I worked in addiction recovery, is that they never dealt with the actual reason that people were addicted, which is why people have so much difficulty beating their addiction, because they're not healing the thing that created it in the first place. So you have to do the work. And this is part of the reason why I talk so much about the importance of finding somebody, a professional who can help you, who can take this journey with you, because we need somebody to support us and who understands all the different nuances and struggles and difficulties and everything that come up when we are doing that healing. So we need somebody. We can't do this on our own. But none of these other things, even the best therapists in the world, can't do it for you. So it's not about you, but I do want to say this, I have to say this, that you have to do the work too. You have to be willing to show up. You have to be willing to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to speak what is true, the fears and the shame and all of that, even when everything in you is telling you to run the other way. Now, I'm not saying do that all at once. I'm not saying do that in a first session. It takes time. But you have to be willing to feel uncomfortable. You have to be willing to feel afraid. You have to be willing to trust, once you've given yourself enough time to have reason to believe that you can trust. So it's not just blindly finding somebody and sharing everything. That's not at all what I mean. And please don't do that. That's usually never helpful, because even if it's a good person, you're going to feel completely overwhelmed with vulnerability and shame and fear and all kinds of stuff. So definitely don't do that. So you do have to do with it, or you do have to stick with it. You have to do the work. And there will be times that you want to stop. There will be times when you feel like, I'm not feeling any better. Why am I going to keep doing this? And if that happens, please talk to your therapist, because if you stop, if you give up, then you are reinforcing all those beliefs. All of them. So talk to your therapist. Let them know how you're feeling about it. Let them know that you're struggling with it. And if your therapist or your coach, whatever, isn't able to hear that, or tells you something that just doesn't feel like they're getting it or hearing you, let them know that. I know that's not an easy thing to do, but please try to let them know that, because sometimes it can be a misunderstanding or miscommunication. But if that's happened at different times, then maybe that's just not the right therapist for you. Or maybe it's time for you to move on, because sometimes the right therapist for you at one point in your life isn't going to be the right therapist for you at another point in your life. That can be the case quite often. So please think about that. There's something else that I just thought about. One of the things that comes up a lot, and I've talked about this before too. In fact, I think I did a video specifically on affirmations, but I wanted to address it here. In all kinds of self-help books and in all kinds of things that you'll read, affirmations is a huge thing. And I use affirmations. Like I encourage affirmations with people, with a caveat. But One of the difficulties with affirmations is that it seems like a really kind of easy thing to do. It's very simple. You just say a few things every day or whatever, and it's supposed to change your limiting belief. Well, again, it may help you feel energized. It may help you feel hopeful or confident or whatever, and maybe it doesn't. But it doesn't work long term by itself because your core belief is not about to begin to believe something because you say it. It's just not. It's not registering beyond your mind. And if it's not registering beyond your mind, there's no way it's ever going to change what you believe at your core, because all of this work is about moving beyond your mind. Like, we have to use our mind, but it's incorporating everything. It's incorporating our mind, our voice, our heart, our nervous system, our bodies. It incorporates everything. So we can use affirmations in a way that can actually help us begin to believe something different. But looking in a mirror every day or having Post-it notes every day with these beautiful affirmations isn't going to change anything that you believe at your core by itself. I actually have, if you're not signed up to my newsletter, on my website, courageousjourneys.com, on the homepage, there's a place where you can sign up for my newsletter. And when you do, you'll get a little kind of e-book journal thing that I created about how to use affirmations, some specific affirmations, in a way that can help you work on changing your core beliefs. Now, while I think that's helpful, that by itself isn't going to change your core belief. It's not going to heal you by itself. But it is a good practice, I think. So if you haven't signed up for my newsletter yet, you can hop over there and get that. The other thing I wanted to say, and I talked about this yesterday in the video that I did, and again, I'll plan to upload it in the next day or so here on YouTube. But I was a little, I had a lot of energy moving yesterday when I did that video. I was feeling really frustrated. I was just, like I said, afraid ultimately, because I've heard from people. I've received messages from people, mostly people that have found me on YouTube and watched videos, but I've received so many messages from people over the years. I think I started this channel actually 6 years ago, which is kind of crazy. But I've received messages from people who have shared how hopeless or devastated, confused, hurt they've felt after doing the thing that they're supposed to do to feel better, and it didn't work, and it left them feeling more hopeless, reinforcing the idea that they'll never get better, all of those things. And when I read the post yesterday that instigated the video, it was very present, I think, specifically for me, because I don't know if it was Monday or Tuesday, was World Suicide Prevention Day, and I did a post about that. And the reality is that when people are feeling suicidal, it's because they feel hopeless. And I've known too many people in my life, even personally, but certainly in a professional role. I've heard from and known too many people that part of the reason that they get to that place of such hopelessness is because they've done the things that they thought they were supposed to do. They've gone to the coach, they've gone to the therapist, they've gone to the treatment center, they've read the books, whatever it is, and they don't feel any better off, and very often end up feeling worse. And that's not okay, People should not feel worse, and I get why it happens, and the reality is there have been people, I'm sure, that have worked with me and felt worse at a time and then stopped coming, and that just makes me really sad and kind of breaks my heart. There are people that I've worked with who, in our work together, have left a session, or in the week after a session or whatever, ended up feeling worse. And maybe it's just because of something that we talked about, or maybe it's because of something I've said or done where they felt dismissed or that I wasn't getting it or something like that. And this is why I also say that it's so important to talk to your therapist about that or your coach or whatever, because most often it is a misunderstanding or miscommunication. Sometimes it may not be, but oftentimes it is. And when you can bring that into the room or into the conversation, then there's an opportunity to heal that. And the reality is, in my work with people anyway, the healing happens because of the relationship that we have. Yes, I teach them a lot, I help them see and understand things, but it happens because they learn to trust, because they learn to see that we're equal, that I'm not better, that I'm not smarter, that I'm not more deserving, and so I've been able to heal and they're not or whatever. Because when things have happened in the context of our relationship, and they will inevitably happen. If you're seeing a therapist, there is absolutely, or a coach, there's absolutely going to be a time when you feel like, what the hell was that about? Or what did she mean by that? That is going to happen. And that's not really necessarily at all a bad thing. Because if you bring that back in and you're able to talk about it, you get to have the experience of feeling whatever it left you feeling. And instead of just running from it to protect yourself, you come back and you use your voice and you have a conversation. And whether it's an apology, whether it's a new understanding of the miscommunication or whatever it is, you're able to talk about it. And that experience itself heals you. It's not all the healing that needs to happen, but it chips away. It chips off a chunk, actually, of that core belief. Like everything that you do to heal chips away at that core belief, little tiny pieces at a time. But doing something like that and having the experience where you can be heard and accepted and where your opinion matters, that chips away a huge chunk of that core belief. And, talking about mind and we have to integrate and all of that, that experience lets you experience it on every level. Because it is certainly in your mind, right? All those thoughts are going crazy. You have to talk yourself into going in and having that conversation. Your voice, you get to use your voice. You get to be heard. Your heart is used and heals in this experience because you've been hurt or felt disappointed or whatever. And you're opening yourself to having that conversation. You're opening to being vulnerable and taking a risk. And your body heals because that doesn't feel good, right? To think about doing that. Like your energy is all over the place. You're either completely shut down and numbed, which is also a reaction, and it's your body is working really, really, really hard to keep everything at bay, or you're feeling all this fear and uncertainty and the fight or flight thing is really kicking in. And so then when you go in there and you use your voice, which expresses energy, and you get to feel that you're heard. Maybe you hear an authentic apology. Maybe you get to heal that misunderstanding. Then your body goes from feeling all that uncertainty and fear and survival stuff to feeling calm, to feeling maybe even connected, supported, loved, And that does a tremendous amount of healing for your body. So again, there's different things out there that are helpful to heal the trauma in your body, like trauma release and somatic experiencing, and even energy healing and all of that. Those things can be really helpful, but when you get to experience in a mindful kind of conscious way, be aware of it consciously, of that shift in energy as it's happening, that goes way further than any other modality you can use, because it's incorporating every aspect of healing. So I get that may not make a whole lot of sense if you haven't actually experienced anything like that yet. But you could even think about it in terms of having a fear of trying something new, something that doesn't necessarily completely kick you into survival mode, but something that just brings up a lot of fear and or uncertainty. But you do the thing anyway, and it turns out well, right? So even in that experience, your body has been able to shift how it's feeling. Part of the reason that it doesn't actually typically change a whole lot for you, generally speaking, is because you don't take the conscious or the time consciously to integrate that experience. So again, we have to use our conscious thinking, our conscious mind, our conscious experience, in addition to all of those other things, in order to be able to actually heal that core wounding. So I think that I've said everything that I had intended to say on this video. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to see if I can go through here and respond to some of this stuff. So thank you again, everybody, for being here. I'm going to put my glasses on this time, so hopefully I can see a little bit better. Hello, everybody. Does healing mean that you've moved past needing those coping mechanisms you mentioned, or are those always things you need, even if you're far along in healing? So healing, so we always use coping. So no matter where we are on this journey, even when we're way on the other side of healing, we always cope. We're always, life happens, stress happens, we're always coping. Well, not always coping, but we always need coping mechanisms for different reasons. What is different is that when you have not yet healed, or when you're unaware that you even need to heal or whatever, we tend to cope in unhealthy ways. So I did a video on coping mechanisms. So avoidance, minimizing, denying. I can't think of what the other one I talked about right now is. But we also do a lot of other really unhealthy coping mechanisms, like self-harm and addictive behaviors, self-sabotaging behaviors, isolating, all kinds of things. We do that because it's not really a conscious process, and that's what we've learned that helps us feel safer. And the ironic thing is it actually doesn't really help us feel safer, but our body thinks that it does. So those things don't help us. In fact, they create more struggle for us, especially if they make you feel any shame. If you feel shame because you do any of those things, then it's even worse. When you are on the other side of healing, or when you're healthy, and healthy is kind of a relative thing because there's a spectrum of healthiness, but when you're relatively healthy and you're stressed out or something really difficult happens, the way that you cope is going to look very different. So when you're in a healthy place and difficult things are going on around you, and it could be something significant, like the death of a loved one, or something really stressful at work, or even something kind of traumatic. If you have a history of abuse, I'm going to use a different example. So not necessarily something traumatic like assault or anything like that. But let's say, again, like a car accident where somebody is injured, but like hopefully not dies or anything. Like that could be a traumatic thing. or witnessing, violence over there or something like that, that can definitely be traumatic. But if you've really done the healing, mind and body, then how you cope with that, instead of retreating, instead of going out and getting drunk or getting high or cutting or completely isolating yourself and feeling like you can't leave your house again, instead, what you'll likely do is, like, you might freak out in the moment or something like that, but you will likely go talk about it. Like, in that moment, instead of feeling like you can't talk about it or you have to hide or whatever, you'll talk about it. You'll do some soothing things. You'll do some deep breathing. You will connect with somebody. You will journal. You'll do something. You'll distract yourself in a healthy, intentional way. You'll do something to help calm you, but it's not going to lead to more difficulty for you. So I hope that makes sense. And this is a good place for me to talk about this too. So I talk about distraction a lot. Distraction is one of the things that can be an unhealthy way of coping, and it can also be a healthy way of coping. The difference is that you're doing it intentionally. When it's coming from an unhealthy place, you often do it unintentionally. It just kind of automatically happens, and you might distract yourself doing things that don't necessarily help you feel any better, may actually make you feel worse. When you're distracting intentionally from a healthy place, you are making a conscious choice to do something to take your mind off of it. You're not denying that it hurts. You're not denying that it's stressing you out. You're not denying that maybe it's something you need to talk to somebody about later. But you're just making a choice in that moment to, okay, I'm going to go read this, or I'm going to go do this thing instead. And then later, I'll allow the space to work through whatever that's brought up for me. So hopefully that makes sense. I usually regret saying anything about what happened right away. So part of that can be just your own sense of vulnerability and wanting to shut it down really quickly because you're afraid of being hurt or not hurt, or whatever. And sometimes it can be because you might read into that person's reaction. Now, it's possible that person's reaction may not have been appropriate or healthy. But sometimes if we have an expectation that somebody's going to judge us or not care or something like that, we can very easily read into their expression or their body language or their tone to suggest that maybe they don't care or don't want to hear it or whatever, when that may not be the case. And that's a time when having a conversation, maybe not in that moment when you're still feeling all of that, but having a conversation might actually be really helpful to talk through that. I always feel like people don't believe me. And that is part of that expectation that I was just talking about. And I think it's also a fear. We often, especially if we have abuse histories as children, we do have this just kind of innate fear that we're not going to be believed. And part of that comes from our own denial. When we've denied either that something specific happened or the impact that it's had on us, or maybe it wasn't really that bad, or maybe they didn't really mean it or whatever, we are actually telling ourselves that what happened wasn't real or wasn't actually a big deal. So if we are not believing our truth, then there's no way we can think that somebody else is going to believe us. But again, all of that is really unconscious. But that can lead to the fear of not being believed. And this is where trying to kind of be somewhat discerning about who you choose to share with can be important in that, for sure. Yeah, so Marion, I could see you share here that your therapist said, no, I don't think you, I think what you're saying here is, so you asked your therapist, I'm sorry, I'm just going to read what you said here. Like, I asked my therapist if I just made up being abused, and she said, no, I think you experienced what you felt as abuse. Um, I would never really probably say that specifically to a client. And again, obviously I don't know the exact circumstances. I don't know your therapist. So I can't be, you know, I can't say specifically about the situation, but I could certainly understand why you would feel. You said here, I feel like that would mean in an objective way, I was not really abused. I get that. I think most people would probably feel that way. I think I certainly probably would have felt that way as well. Um, and again, I don't know why she may have said that, but it's possible that in her mind, like she might have this checklist of what abuse specifically looks like or doesn't look like. And maybe what she was trying to say is whether it checks off all these boxes or not, you're left with feeling betrayed. You're left with feeling the aftermath of being abused. Hopefully, that's what she meant, which I think that matters too. That absolutely matters too. But like I said, I don't think I would have said it that way. But that would be something, again, an example of going back to the therapist and saying, what did you mean by that? Or even when you said this, it made me feel like you don't really think that I was, but that doesn't matter or something. So those kinds of examples. And I appreciate you sharing that because I think there's other people that, while it may not be the exact same words, have probably felt similarly. So thank you for that. How do distraction and avoidance differ from each other? This is a great question too. Okay, so I don't know when you shared this question, so I may have already answered this a little bit. So distraction and avoidance there are some similarities for sure. In fact, distraction is actually a form of avoidance on both sides potentially. So this is a great question. What I would say probably more specifically about it is that in the unhealthy way, avoidance, it also has a component of like, no, I don't need to talk about that. No, it's not a big deal. So some minimizing potentially going along with that. Where distraction would be something comes up, a feeling, a thought, a memory comes up, and you just immediately move on to something else without necessarily even being conscious that that's what you're doing. Or maybe you are conscious, but there's never an intention to actually look at it. In a healthy way, distraction is temporary avoidance, but it's a conscious temporary avoidance. Like, okay, I can't do this right now. I want to wait until I have support, or I want to wait until I get home, or I'm going to wait to journal about this because I don't have the time. So it's more conscious than unconscious, I think is probably the best way to think about that. I also do think that avoidance tends to be just an automatic, in an unhealthy way, that avoidance is kind of more just a perpetual way of dealing without really recognizing that it's your way of dealing. Hi, Kelly. Hi, Joey. Feel so much better than I used to. That's great. I was able to start going to university, to work while I'm studying, to meet people, to not cope with cutting, not eating, drinking. Soon my therapy ends, and I always think I could be so happy because of all the things I have changed. But will I ever be able to feel peace inside of myself? Will the little child stop screaming of pain and horror? So how can I help the little child to feel safe, worthy, rescued, loved, and not always want my therapist to be my mom who rescues, sees, protects, and comforts me? So, Joy, I would say, so great. I'm so glad that you're feeling better than you used to, and that's absolutely necessary as part of this whole healing process. I will say that getting to that place doesn't necessarily mean that, okay, now I've done the healing I need to do. Getting to that place often is when the much deeper work can sometimes begin. Because when you're in that place where you're feeling a lot better, you're using healthier coping mechanisms, then you have the capacity to really work on healing those fears of being abandoned, those fears of betrayal, or that grief, that intense grief around betrayal and loss. Because when difficult things come up, you have the capacity, you have enough experiences that you can kind of hold on to, that you can get through it, that you can trust the support that you have, that you're not going to feel horrible forever. So when you start getting into that deeper stuff, instead of your survival mechanism kicking in and protecting you in whatever way that looks, to kind of keep you from being able to go deeper, often that's when you can do that deeper work. And what you're saying here makes me suspect, and of course I can't say this specifically for you and your situation, but if you have fear of that comes up about not having your therapist there, one, that's important to talk to your therapist about. But to me, it might also suggest that there's a lot more healing that needs to be done. And when I say a lot more, it doesn't necessarily mean specifically a whole lot more time. Like I said, it may be more just about really being able to uncover all of those other pieces that just need to be brought to the surface and made aware and honored in that aspect. So I hope that makes sense. I will say that when you've been in therapy for a while, if you feel really safe in your therapeutic relationship, and that person has been your biggest source of support and validation and comfort, especially if you don't feel like you have a lot of solid connection outside of it, ending a therapeutic relationship can be terrifying, even if you've done some really, really, really beautiful healing. It can be terrifying because you do kind of feel like you're being cut loose. Again, I'm thinking of that movie Gravity, like where you feel like you're being, like you're only tethered to feeling okay and feeling safe and feeling valued. Like you can feel like that's being cut off and you're just going to be out there on your own. It can be terrifying, but that's part of the reason why talking about ending the therapeutic relationship is so important. And hopefully your therapist is, kind of talking about that you're talking about as you're getting close to ending. You're talking about all those things that might come up, all those fears and uncertainties. One of the things that I tend to do when I'm working with somebody and we're kind of on that other side is decreasing the amount of times that we're meeting. So if we've been meeting like every other week or whatever, or I'm sorry, if we've been meeting every week, we might go to every other week or every third week for a period of time, not a long period of time, to just kind of let you get accustomed to connecting more with those other resources that you have in your life, those other relationships, helping you have, then in that space you have experience, you get to experience struggling a little bit with the ending of that relationship, with dealing with things that come up, and believing in your ability to get through them. But the reality is, ending a therapeutic relationship is a loss. It is absolutely a loss. And that's why, therapeutically speaking, it's really, like, I think I can say never ideal at all to just end. It really, that is going to leave you with a lot of unfinished stuff. So hopefully you have an opportunity to do that. Somebody else, I think something up here too. Oh, I think I got to that. All right. Lenny. Oh, thank you, Lenny. I'm glad that it helps. Lenny says, you help me understand my therapist and self-care for both sides to have a more healthy relationship and healing and spiritual growth. Yeah. As therapists, we need to have our own support, which is part of the reason that I think that anybody who does healing kind of work, again, not that we heal you, but we help you heal. But anybody who does that kind of work really needs to have their own support as well, and should have gone through their own therapy to understand their own stuff. Via, what do I mean by body healing versus mental healing? Um, so I'm guessing that you probably jumped in somewhere in the middle of the video. So that other people don't have to go through the whole thing again, I would encourage you to go back and listen to where I talk about integrating, and I talk about mind, voice, heart, core, all of that. And I don't remember at what point that I talk about that, but I know that I stopped my kind of teaching at about 41 minutes. So if you jumped in at some point towards the end there, or more kind of in the middle, then I would encourage you to go back and listen to that. And certainly if you still have more questions, feel free to share them in the comments after this video is done, or even now, if you were here and something still isn't making sense, please feel free to share any specific questions that you may have as well. So I think that I've gotten through from Germany. I just saw Germany. Oh, hi. I didn't realize, Joe, you were from Germany. Welcome. So I think that I've gotten through everything here. So if you've got any questions quickly, then please share them. I've got a little bit. I've got about maybe a few more minutes that I can stay on. So feel free to share them here. If you are watching this on replay, please let me know that you're watching this on replay. You can do hashtag replay, and you can share your thoughts, comments, questions. I do want to say, so going back to the example that I gave about divorce and how it could affect two different people, or two people very differently depending on all kinds of other circumstances. I think I have friends who are coaches that I adore, and I know that their desire is to help people. Their desire is to take what they have learned through therapy or through coaching or through learning in whatever capacity they have, and to help people. So I want to make it clear that I am not adamantly opposed to coaching or self-help books or anything else, and like therapy is the only thing that's going to help you. Because the reality is, I've known and worked with enough people that therapy has not been helpful to them, that they've been to a lot of different therapists, and sometimes a therapist can even create more harm when they haven't been properly trained or whatever. I will say too, though, that sometimes when people feel like they've been hurt by a therapist, it can be some of those things that I gave examples of a little while ago, where it's a misunderstanding, or maybe the therapist misunderstood what you were saying or asking, and so their response was completely off the mark, which is, again, why it's so important to go back, because back to the point of just ending therapy can leave you with a lot of stuff that needs to be healed as well. So you add to what needs to be healed. So I'm not saying that therapists are perfect and everything else sucks. Please know that that's really not at all what I'm trying to say. What I am trying to say is that there are a lot of people out there, even in books, and I don't think that books typically tend to do this, but people have an idea that a book is going to be the thing that heals you. And I think there are a lot of people, whether they call themselves a coach or a healer or an energy practitioner or whatever else it may be, there are a lot of people out there who, again, sometimes even coming from a very helpful place, and maybe something has worked for them, and will tell you that it's going to work for you and that they can heal you and that this is the thing that you need to do to whatever. Those are the things that get me going. Especially again after Me Too, so many people started talking about healing your trauma. And if you do this, it'll heal your trauma. And I can heal your sexual trauma. You just need to do this or you just need to do that. And that's wrong. It's unethical. It is irresponsible. It's just wrong. And that's the struggle that I have had. Because to be a coach, anybody, absolutely everybody, could decide to be a coach without any therapy, without any understanding of their own wounding at a deep level, without any regulatory body, because there isn't a body that regulates the coaching industry. There is nothing that regulates in a mandated way. There is nothing that regulates the coaching training that is out there. Anybody can create their own certification for coaching. Literally, anybody can create their own certification for coaching, charge you lots of money, and you go through their coach training and get your little paper at the end. And now you're a certified whatever coach they want to call you. And that's the problem that I have. That is not okay. I saw a Facebook ad, and I think I did a post about this, but I saw a Facebook ad, I don't know, several months ago, maybe at this point, of a training on, I think it was Udemy. So the ad was a Udemy ad for become a relationship expert, help your clients heal their relationship or whatever. You can like build your business. Now you can call yourself an expert. Like that was part of the ad. This is what frustrates me. Like literally that was in the ad. So call yourself an expert, heal your clients' relationships. So I looked at the course, and the course was, I don't remember exactly, so please don't. So I know that I might get some of this wrong, but the idea is still the same. Like quite literally, I think it was a series of 6 pre-recorded videos. It may have been 8, it may have been 4, I don't know, but somewhere around 6 videos. I don't care if it was 20 videos. That does not qualify you as a relationship expert. But I think it was like 6 videos that you watched. And honestly, I think that might have been it. And it was on sale for like $57 or $97 or $147 or whatever it was. And that was supposed to make you a relationship expert. You were supposed to be able to, they're telling you that now on your website or in your marketing campaign, you can call yourself an expert. You can, relationship counselor, it actually had in there as well. Become a relationship counselor. Like 6 videos, I don't know, maybe there was something else in there, like some worksheets or something that you did. Can you imagine? So you don't have any formal education, no formal training. Nobody's saying, except the people that created this course, nobody's saying that you're now qualified. No internship, no practicum, nothing. But after that, you can be a relationship counselor and be the go-to expert for helping couples heal their relationship. That is the kind of stuff that gives the whole coaching industry a bad name, that makes me feel so just this frustration about the fact that after Me Too, all these coaches are out there saying, I can heal your trauma. There was even a therapist, I think she was a therapist, creating a course to become trauma informed. So this is for anybody. It could be for somebody who has trauma. It could be for somebody who's a coach. It could be somebody who's a therapist. Become trauma informed so you can help your clients heal their trauma. So it was good information, absolutely good information. But the idea was selling this to people who wanted to be a coach or wanted to help people heal their trauma as a coach. So you take this, I don't know, 6-week course or whatever it was for however much money it was. I think like, I don't know, 700, 1,000, $1,500. And now you can help people heal their trauma. Remember, to be a coach requires nothing. It absolutely requires nothing. Yes, there are lots of certifications out there. There is some international governing body, I think. When I say governing body, like they're their own governing body. So they've created this thing and they certify coaches in different ways. But certification doesn't actually mean much of anything. Even as a therapist, there are certifications you can get. Yes, it means you've had additional training in it, but it doesn't necessarily make you an expert. It doesn't, like, you can pay your money and become certified in this thing. Does it mean that you're any more qualified than somebody else? It doesn't. I've had certifications. I'm not against certifications, but the reality is they don't necessarily mean anything, especially in an unregulated industry. Because at least as a therapist, if you're offering CEUs to therapists, then the governing body, the regulatory body, the licensing body has to say that the material that you're teaching qualifies as helpful information. But when you're talking about an unregulated industry, it doesn't mean anything. And that's why I keep talking about this, because for people that have that more significant wounding, there's a good chance that it's not going to be as helpful as you expect it to be. And the reality is it can create even more damage. And yes, that can happen with a therapist as well. But at least with a therapist, you have a place that you can go to and file a complaint. You can sue that person. If they are licensed, then you have a regulatory body that you can go to, a state or government body that you can go to and file a complaint, which can potentially make that person get a lot more training. It can take that license away from that person if they've got several complaints. So there's an outlet, at least, if you are working with a therapist, that you can go to if there are really bad things that are happening there. And the reality is, in a coaching industry, that doesn't exist. Now, there are also a lot of therapists who end up coaching. So that's, in my opinion, that's going to be better, because if they've been a therapist, then they've had the experience, they've had the education, they've had the training. Hopefully they've maybe even held a license at some point, which is where I'm at now. I am no longer licensed clinically to practice therapy independently, which is why now what I do is mentoring. Because I don't have that license. I gave it up because I didn't want to keep paying for it. And there were a lot of limitations in terms of how I could do my work, in terms of mostly who I could work with, because I work with people now internationally. But okay, sorry, I got off in that little tirade, and that's where I often tend to go. Because it's so frustrating, because again, the messages that I hear from people who have taken this course or done this person's training or whatever, and I've even heard from coaches who have done a lot of the coach training or whatever that's out there, and feel completely lost out there. Marian, I'm really sorry to hear that. I don't know where you live in the world. No evidence, so you can't really go to the police. Sometimes, even if there are no criminal avenues that you might be able to take, maybe an order of protection or a restraining order could be possible, because that requires a lot less evidence, so to speak. The other thing that I would encourage you to do, again, depending on where you are in the world, a rape crisis center may be able to offer help as well. So wherever you are in the world, you can type in your location and rape crisis, or sexual assault advocacy might be another thing to type in specifically around this. But you definitely need to have some support around you. Hi, Christina. I don't want to go anymore to my therapy. I feel very helpless and so much fear. Until the last 2 weeks, I would like to talk about this with my therapist. I don't feel the same trust. So I don't know if you're saying that that it's just that you are seeing your therapist, but you don't really want to talk about this with your therapist. That is definitely really hard. If in general you feel like you've been working with your therapist for a while, but you don't necessarily feel like you are connecting or trusting your therapist, it may not be a bad idea, if it's available to you, to maybe have a session or two with another therapist and see how that feels. So maybe you're not going to talk about the things that are really fearful for you to talk about, but to just kind of see how it feels to sit in the space with another therapist. Because maybe that relationship just isn't working for you. Or if just in the last couple of weeks you've not necessarily been feeling really comfortable with your therapist, you've been feeling more fearful, maybe that's something to talk with your therapist about. But sometimes if we just are not feeling understood, we're not able to talk about anything that really matters, especially if we've been seeing that person for a while now. If it's the first session and you're feeling that way, it doesn't necessarily mean anything at all. But if you've been seeing that person for a while, but you just kind of feel like you're never able to share anything that matters, that can be an indicator that maybe it's time to try somebody else. But if you have any level of safety, then please try talking with your therapist. And you could even say, like, there's some things like I feel like I want to talk about, but I'm not feeling like I can get it out. I'm not feeling safe enough. I'm not feeling whatever, however you want to say that to that person. So, but I would encourage you to definitely try to talk about that. So, thank you for listening. I know sometimes there are things that I can go off a little bit on a rant about, but when I do that, it's usually because it's something that's been on my mind for quite some time, or it just reminds me of how how much it matters. Because I was thinking about it just feels very, very passionate to me. So the reality is the things that feel really passionate to me are because I've seen the difficulties that it can create. I've witnessed the pain in an expression, in the body language, or in the spoken words that people have felt when they've believed that it really is hopeless because they've done these things and it hasn't helped, or they feel worse, or they've gone to this person and feel like, the person was just like, just do this, just do this, just do this, and everything's going to be great. Like, just focus on all the good you have in your life. And all this other stuff won't matter. Or you just need to stop, being in that negative space. You just need to focus on all the beautiful things in your life, and that's going to make you feel better. It doesn't work that way. That can be helpful to an extent, but doing that means you're denying everything else. You're invalidating everything else, which makes the problem actually bigger. Over in the big picture, it makes everything bigger. You're not actually helping heal anything. You're bypassing, you're avoiding, you're denying by doing that, which is why you end up feeling worse. Thank you, Lenny. I'm glad that it's helpful. I do want to be clear, especially on this conversation, that I'm talking about all of this from my experience as a therapist, my training, my education, my 18 years or whatever of doing this work. It does come from that. But I also wanted to be very clear that what I'm doing here, these videos are more about educating. So remember when I talked about learning versus healing? Like these videos can go a long way in learning. They can go a long way in those aha moments where you feel like, yes, like you connect the dots, like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. There's healing that happens in that. Without a doubt, there is healing that happens in that. But in order, even for these videos, and I'm glad that you find them so helpful and powerful, but in order for what you're learning in these videos to actually heal over, like to actually heal the thing that needs to be healing, we have to also do the work of integrating. And that's where it goes: mind, voice, heart, core. Like we have to be able to do all of those pieces. So as helpful and as powerful as these videos may be, and I am so honored and grateful that they are a piece of the overall work that needs to be done. So I've actually had people say to me that they have shared things that they've learned in these videos with their therapist. Or I've actually had some people say that they've shared the link to my channel with their therapist. I don't know how many therapists are actually going to watch it. I hope that they do. But sometimes taking like something that you've learned here to your therapist and say, so what do you think about this? Or help me understand this, or whatever. That then can take this further. These live videos actually, or in the group, the Journey to Wholeness group, can help what you're learning. So the mind aspect can help you integrate that further with the processing that's happening, with the connecting and the vulnerability and the deeper learning that's happening. And even doing these YouTube lives, when you're participating, can take it a bit deeper because you're using your voice, right? You're participating in this. Other people's questions or what they're sharing opens you up even further than what I would just naturally say, because I can take things a bit deeper as well. So all of that can be really powerful and an important part of your healing. And again, I am honored that what I share here helps you deepen your understanding and helps you understand yourself better. But it is one part. We need these other pieces to help us heal overall. We cannot do this on our own. We cannot do this even with the best videos, the best courses, the best books out there. We cannot do it on our own. None of us can. And we need people that have the understanding and the experience, the training to help us do that. So again, thank you all for being here. Thank you for joining me. Thank you. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please make sure you subscribe. And if you have subscribed, make sure that you click on the little bell. So there's a little bell somewhere, depending on where you're coming to my channel from or where you're seeing this video. I think on each video there is a bell below the video. I think where you can subscribe as well, but there's a little bell. If you click on that bell, that's how you get the notifications. I guess if you subscribe, you might get an email or something like that. But if you click on the little bell, you'll actually get notifications of when there are new videos, when I'm going live. And I think that you might actually get or are more likely to get a notification if I post something in the community as well. So again, thank you everybody for being here, and I will look forward to seeing you soon. Have a beautiful rest of your day.